Picture a primate high in a canopy. Working along a branch, it has climbed a long way to reach. It bites into a fruit and finds it sour, hard, still green, and drops it. It tries another. Sour again. Then a third, and this one gives instantly. Soft, heavy, running with sugar. Something in its brain registers a small, sharp reward, and it eats until there is nothing left. That reward was not a pleasure. It was a piece of information, and acting on it was the difference between a wasted climb and a fed body. This is where the story of humans and sugar actually begins, and it begins a very long time, before there were any humans in it. What we inherited from that primate was not a taste, and not a preference, and certainly not a vice. It was an instrument, a chemical detector, sitting on the tongue, doing a specific job with considerable accuracy. Here is the job. Certain molecules land on receptors in the mouth. Those receptors fire, and a signal travels to the brain carrying a simple message. This is worth eating. Take more of it. Take it now. That message feels like enjoyment from the inside. But enjoyment is just the delivery mechanism. The actual content of the signal is a claim about the world. And for millions of years, that claim was true. Think about what sweetness actually indicated in a world with no processed food. 4 separate facts, all bundled into a single taste. The first is ripeness. Fruit converts starches into sugars as it ripens, which means sweetness is not a matter of opinion or preference, but a direct chemical readout of exactly what stage a fruit has reached. Bite something sour, and you are tasting a fruit that has not finished becoming food yet. Bite something sweet, and the process is complete. No judgment required, no experience needed, no way to be talked into a wrong answer. The fruit tells you what it is, and the tongue simply reads it. The second is safety, at least roughly. A great many plant toxins are bitter, and bitterness is precisely the taste our ancestors evolved to reject with an involuntary recoil. Sweetness sits at the far opposite end of that same scale. It was never a guarantee of safety, and plenty of sweet things could still hurt you. But as a rapid first filter, applied in a fraction of a second, in a world that offered no other way to test anything before swallowing it, it was a genuinely valuable piece of evidence. The third is energy, and this is the one that mattered most. Sugar is fast fuel. Glucose, the body can pull apart and use almost immediately, with none of the lengthy processing that fat or protein or tough plant matter demands. For an animal whose entire existence was governed by a shortage of calories, and whose brain in particular was an expensive organ that ran on glucose, that was the single most valuable property any food could possibly have. And the fourth is urgency. Ripe fruit does not wait for you. It is ripe for a short window, and then it is fermenting, or rotting on the ground, or already eaten by something faster. So, the message arriving on the tongue was never simply, "This is good." It was something closer to, "This is good, and it will not be here long, and there are other animals in this forest looking for exactly the same thing right now." One taste. 4 true statements about the world, delivered instantly, requiring no thought and no interpretation. Now consider how reliable that instrument was, because the reliability is the whole point. In the environment where our lineage evolved, ask yourself what could actually trigger a strong, sweet response. Ripe fruit, honey, occasionally, if you were willing to be stung for it, a little sap, and a handful of plant parts. That is very nearly the complete list. And every item on it was genuinely worth eating, which means false positives were close to impossible. If your tongue reported sweetness, there was something real and valuable in your mouth, essentially every single time across an unbroken stretch of millions of years. There was no category of thing in that world that tasted intensely sweet while being worthless, and no way for the signal to be triggered by something that wasn't food. An instrument that accurate deserves to be trusted completely. And complete trust is exactly what evolution built into the response. There was never any reason to install doubt, or a second opinion, or a mechanism for checking the reading against anything else. The tongue said sweet, the brain said take it, and for 10 million years that chain of reasoning was correct. Then there is the question of how strong that reward needed to be. And this is where people underestimate the situation. Getting sugar was work. Real, dangerous, expensive work. It meant climbing, often very high, on branches that narrow as you go out along them and might not hold. A fall from a canopy is not a minor injury in a world with no medicine. It is frequently the end of the animal. It meant searching a large territory and carrying a detailed mental map of what was fruiting, where, and roughly when, updated constantly. Because a tree that was heavy last week might be stripped bare today. And it meant competing with birds and insects, and other primates who wanted precisely the same thing, who had often arrived first, and some of whom would fight over it. An animal will not repeatedly pay those costs for a mild, agreeable sensation. Think about what the reward actually has to accomplish. It has to be strong enough to pull a body up a tree it might fall out of. Strong enough to keep it searching after 2 failures and a third. Strong enough to override fatigue and fear, and the sensible instinct to stay on solid ground. So the sugar signal was tuned to be powerful, close to compulsive, insistent enough to organize an animal's whole day around finding it. Because anything weaker simply would not have generated the behavior that kept those animals alive. The intensity of the craving is not an accident or an excess. It is calibrated to the difficulty of the task it was built to motivate. Which brings us to the strangest feature of the whole system, and the one that matters most today. There is no off switch. Sit with that for a second, because it is genuinely unusual. Your body has stopping mechanisms for nearly everything. Drink too much water and you feel it and stop. Eat too much salt and it turns unpleasant fast. Fat and protein build fullness signals that eventually end the meal. Even breathing is regulated without your involvement. Most systems have a point where the body simply says, enough. Sugar has almost nothing comparable. None of that machinery. You can keep going well past any sensible point, and the signal saying take more does not meaningfully reverse. That looks like a design flaw until you ask the obvious question. What would have built a limit? Evolution does not solve problems that do not occur. A stopping mechanism for sugar could only have evolved if there had been individuals who consistently suffered from consuming too much of it, suffered enough and often enough and across enough generations that natural selection had something to act on. And in the world where this system was calibrated, that situation did not merely happen rarely. It essentially never happened at all. There was no scenario in which a primate encountered unlimited sugar. Consider every natural source and notice that each one comes with a hard physical ceiling already built into it. The fruit on a tree runs out, and then that tree is finished for the year. The season ends, and no amount of wanting brings it back. Honey is defended by thousands of insects, specifically evolved to make taking it expensive. Sap runs slowly and in small quantities. In every single case, the environment itself imposed the limit long before the animal's appetite did, which meant the limit never had to be built into the animal. Why would you evolve a break for a hill that does not exist? So our ancestors carried an accurate instrument, an unusually powerful reward, and no upper bound whatsoever. And in that world, that combination was not a weakness at all. It was close to optimal. It produced animals that reliably located the most calorie-dense food available in their environment, worked hard, and took real risks to obtain it, and then ate as much of it as they physically could when they succeeded. Which was exactly the correct strategy, because the next opportunity was uncertain, possibly weeks away, and possibly claimed by something else before you got there. Now here is where it comes apart, and it isn't the part most people assume. The usual story is that we have too much sugar now. That's true, but it isn't really the interesting problem. The deeper issue is that sugar has been separated from everything it used to mean. Go back to those 4 facts the signal was reporting. Ripeness, safety, energy, urgency. In a piece of fruit, the sweetness is genuinely connected to all 4. It is a readout of something real happening in the object you're holding. Now take a modern sweetened product and run the same 4 checks against it. The sweetness is present, and the instrument fires exactly as it was designed to fire. Full strength, no hesitation, the same signal that pulled a primate up a swaying branch 10 million years ago. But there is no ripeness being reported, because nothing ripened. The sweetness was added rather than developed. There is no safety information either, because sweetness in a manufactured food tells you precisely nothing about whatever else is in it. The correlation that made the signal useful has simply been severed. The energy claim is technically accurate, but wildly out of proportion, arriving stripped of the fiber and water, and sheer physical bulk that used to slow absorption down and impose a natural ceiling on how much any animal could get through in one sitting. And the urgency is not merely exaggerated, it is flatly false. There is no window closing, no competitor approaching, no season about to end. There is another one on the shelf tomorrow, and the day after that, and for as long as you care to keep buying them. So the instrument gives a reading. The reading is strong and confident, and it is attached to nothing at all. The dial moves, and there is nothing behind the dial. That is the actual situation, and it explains something the willpower framing never quite manages to explain. When you feel a pull towards something sweet, your body is not failing you, and it is not being weak, and it is not lacking discipline. It is doing precisely what it spent tens of millions of years being shaped to do, responding immediately and forcefully to what was, for almost the entire history of our lineage, one of the most trustworthy pieces of information any animal could receive. The response is correct. The world it is responding to has been quietly replaced underneath it. A compass isn't broken when you hold a magnet up next to it. It's working perfectly, and that is exactly the problem. So when did ancient humans first start eating sugar? The honest answer is that they never started, because there was never a beginning. Our ancestors were eating sugar before they were human, before they were primates in any form you'd recognize, back through an unbroken line of animals that ate fruit and were rewarded for finding it. There is no first sugar. There is only a taste that has been continuously present in our lineage for longer than almost anything else about us. What did have a beginning, recently, and abruptly, is the situation where that taste can be satisfied without limit, without effort, and without any of the information it was built to detect. So come back now to whatever sweet thing is nearest to you. Somewhere in your kitchen, probably within 20 feet of where you are sitting, there is something that will trigger that ancient instrument instantly and completely. And notice everything it did not require of you. You did not climb for it. You did not wait months for a season to turn, or hold a map of the territory in your head, or arrive first, or fight anything for it, or risk falling out of anything to reach it. It cost you almost nothing, and it is available at any hour, in any quantity you like. And if you finish it, there is more. That last part is the condition your body has no equipment whatsoever to recognize. Every mechanism you inherited was built on the assumption that the sweetness would run out, that the tree would be stripped, the season would close, the hive would be defended, and the opportunity would end. Nothing in you was ever designed to handle an unlimited supply, because nothing in your entire ancestral line ever encountered one. When you reach for it, you are running a program written in canopies for a world of brief, defended, hard-won sweetness. The program is not obsolete, and it is not malfunctioning. It is simply reporting faithfully on a world that stopped existing, using an instrument that nobody ever thought to recalibrate, because for 10 million years, there was never any reason to. If you made it this far, you are exactly the kind of person this channel exists for. We make videos like this one every week about ancient human behavior, about what your body still remembers, and about the gap between the world you were built for and the one you actually live in. If that is something you want more of, hit subscribe. It costs you nothing, and it tells the algorithm that this kind of storytelling is worth keeping alive. See you in the next one.